Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're stepping back to the year 740 CE to explore an event that really it permanently shattered the map of the early Islamic Empire.
We're talking about the Great Berber Revolt.
Exactly. And this isn't just a simple story of, conquest or resistance. It's a profound moment where people who had embraced Islam were fighting their own rulers over what justice and dignity should even mean within the faith.
It's a huge contradiction, really. When you look at the sources from the Umayyad Caliphate in North Africa, you see rulers invoking the universal ideas of Islam.
Right.
Yet their whole system of administration, it was built on,
Wow.
well, on stark ethnic privilege and economic exploitation.
And that is the core mission of this deep dive. We want to use the sources to uncover the specific injustices, the real pressure points that caused this massive uprising.
The big question is, how did an empire, supposedly unified by religion, fracture so completely when the oppressed and the oppressors were, at least in theory, brothers in faith?
So where do we start? This wasn't something that just happened overnight.
No, not at all. The sources make it clear this was the result of decades of mistreatment. It wasn't a random outburst. We can really isolate four main grievances that acted as the kindling for this fire.
The moment the mask fell, as some historians call it.
That's a great way to put it. It revealed the Umayyad system for what it actually was.
Okay, so let's start with what seems like the deepest wound, both financially and spiritually, the issue of taxation.
This is number one. You have huge populations of Berbers who convert to Islam, but they're still treated like second-class citizens by the Arab elite who are in charge.
And how did that play out with taxes?
Well, a core principle of early Islamic governance was that when you converted, you stopped paying the jizya, that's the poll tax for non-Muslims, and instead you paid the normal alms tax, the zakat.
Which was much lower, I assume.
Generally, yes. But our sources show Umayyad officials were just ignoring that.
Yeah.
They kept demanding jizya from Berber converts, or they'd invent other arbitrary taxes to levy on them.
How could they even justify that? I mean, demanding a tax for non-Muslims from people who are Muslims, that seems like a direct denial of their faith.
It was. And the justifications were often just cynical. Sometimes they'd claim a conversion wasn't sincere enough, or they'd just, refuse to update the tax rolls.
So it was just bureaucratic cruelty.
That's a good way to put it. In practice, the governors had revenue quotas to meet for the treasury in Damascus. They saw the Berbers as an easy, exploitable tax base, and their religious status didn't matter as much as the money. It sent a very clear message.
The message being, your status as a Muslim is secondary.
It's secondary to your Berber ethnicity. And that leads right into the second grievance, this entrenched ethnic bias.
So you may have our religion, but you will never have our political status.
Precisely. The Arab elites claimed all the privilege, political, social, legal, especially in the big garrison towns like Kairouan. Berbers, even if they were highly educated or respected in their own communities, were sidelined. They were looked down upon.
And this wasn't just like social snobbery. The sources point to a real denial of dignity and autonomy.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the third factor. The demand for local control. This was about more than just fair taxes. The Berbers wanted to live as free men.
They wanted justice administered by their own people.
Exactly, by their own recognized leaders and judges, not by some distant, often corrupt governor who saw North Africa as just a colony to be squeezed for resources.
So you have this explosive mix of economic injustice, ethnic marginalization, and now you need the ideological fuel to light the fire.
And that is where the Sufi and Kharijite strand of Islam becomes absolutely critical. This is where we move from just politics to revolutionary theology.
The Kharijites. Now, for anyone unfamiliar, they were an early sect that broke away from the mainstream. Why did their message resonate so much here?
Because their core message was a direct challenge to the Umayyad power structure. They rejected the idea of inherited rule of dynasties.
They were radical egalitarians.
Totally. Their doctrine taught that status came from one thing and one thing only: genuine piety, righteousness. It didn't matter if you were Arab or Berber, rich or poor.
And crucially, they believed the Caliph, the leader of all Muslims, could be any pious Muslim.
Any qualified person. It didn't have to be someone from the Quraysh tribe, which was the basis of the Umayyad claim to legitimacy.
That is a theological hammer, as you said.
It is, because if piety is the only thing that matters, then a pious Berber farmer could be seen as morally superior to a corrupt Umayyad governor. It gave them a religious mandate for rebellion against what they saw as sinful, illegitimate rulers.
Okay, that sets the stage perfectly. You've got the grievances, you've got the ideology. So how does the war actually begin? Who leads this thing?
The first figure to really step up is a man named Maysara Ahmad from around the Tangier region. He's the one who first pulls these different Berber tribes together under this banner of equality. He's the initial unifier.
But I know from the sources that the leadership changed. When the fighting really gets going, someone else takes command.
That's right. Once the revolt is in full swing, the tribal chiefs realized they needed a real military mind. Maysara was more of an ideologue, maybe. He was replaced by Khalid ibn Hamid al-Zanati,
As a not a commander.
the Zanata commander, and a brilliant strategist. It was Khalid who led the major military campaigns against the Umayyad armies. It shows you how pragmatic the rebels were. They wanted the best person for the job.
And the results were immediate and devastating for the Umayyads. We have to talk about the Battle of the Nobles in 740.
The Battle of the Nobles was a political earthquake. It's not just a name. Khalid's forces ambushed a huge Ifriqiyan Arab column near Tlemcen.
And this wasn't just any army column.
No, this was filled with the absolute cream of the Umayyad Arab aristocracy, the very people who embodied the ethnic privilege that the Berbers were fighting against. The casualty count for them was, well, it was catastrophic.
So the name is literal. It was a targeted attack on the ruling class.
Exactly. And the effect was a massive surge in Berber morale. Suddenly, tribes that had been on the fence, they flooded to join the revolt. They saw that the power structure could actually bleed. Victory seemed possible.
If that was the political blow, the military hammer fell the very next year in 741, the Battle of Bagdura.
Bagdura was the big one. This was near the Cebu River. By this point, the Caliph in Damascus realized this was an existential threat. So he sent a massive expeditionary force from Syria, the elite of his army, led by a top general.
This was supposed to be the final crushing blow to the revolt.
It was meant to be, but it wasn't. The Berber forces under Khalid's command completely annihilated the Syrian army.
Annihilated.
Thousands of veteran Arab troops were killed, including the commander himself, and that victory, Bagdura, it sealed the fate of the Western Maghreb. The region we now call Morocco was effectively lost to the Umayyads forever.
So by 741, the whole western flank of their empire is just gone. But the sources are clear that the revolt didn't succeed everywhere. The Umayyads held a line in the east.
That's right. And understanding the geography here is essential. We need to talk about Ifriqiya, which is roughly modern-day Tunisia. That's where Kairouan was, the administrative capital of Umayyad North Africa.
And holding that line fell to one man, the governor Hanhala ibn Safwan.
Right. Hanhala managed to organize a defense that stopped the revolt from sweeping all the way across North Africa. He rallied what was left of the Arab forces, and in 742 he won two incredibly important battles, Al-Qarn and Al-Azna.
And what did those victories do?
They stopped the rebel advance cold. The Berber armies, probably exhausted from their other campaigns, failed to take Kairouan, and this created a permanent split. The west and central Maghreb were independent, but the east, Ifriqiya, remained under Umayyad control.
So the immediate outcome is a fractured map. The Umayyads never put it back together again.
Never. And that's the long-term legacy. The collapse of central control leads directly to all these new independent states popping up, often founded by the same Kharijite groups that led the revolution.
And one of these states is particularly fascinating. It goes beyond just political independence. We need to talk about the Bargawada Confederation.
Yes, the Bargawada are maybe the most extreme example of this trend. They were established on the Atlantic Plains, a group of Sufi Kharijites. But they went so much further than anyone else.
Further, how?
They created their own unique religious structure.
Oh.
Their leader, Salih ibn Tarif, actually claimed he was a new prophet.
Wait, a new prophet after Muhammad? That's a radical step in the Islamic world.
It's unbelievable, and it shows the level of autonomy they had. Salih claimed to have received a new revelation, a new scripture, but it was in the Berber language, not Arabic.
So they created their own Berber Quran.
Essentially, yes. Sources say it had 80 chapters. They had their own legal codes, their own prayer rituals. They kept the basics of Islam, like fasting, but they adapted everything to their local context and asserted total independence from everyone.
That's not just a political revolt. That is cultural and religious self-determination on a whole other level.
It absolutely is. The Bargawada show you that this revolt wasn't just about taxes. It was about the fundamental right to define your own identity and practice your own faith without a foreign power telling you you're doing it wrong.
So if we pull back from these individual kingdoms, what is the big takeaway here? What precedent did this revolt set for the wider Islamic world?
The takeaway is Enormous. The revolt basically institutionalized the idea that if you convert to Islam, you are immediately and absolutely a legal and social equal. No ruler in North Africa after this could safely ignore that.
It was a trial of authenticity for the Umayyad model of government. It forced them to confront their own hypocrisy.
It was exactly that. This was a moral revolt. It was a demand that the faith live up to its own promises of justice and equality. And it permanently damaged Umayyad legitimacy wherever that justice was denied.
It also proved that Islam wasn't synonymous with being Arab.
Yes, that's the universal lesson. The
And it-
Berbers proved that local leadership, local identity could coexist with a universal faith.
Which is a powerful idea. Systems built on inequality will eventually break.
Inevitably. The revolt ensured the Islamic West would develop on its own terms, creating a much more pluralistic and, vibrant political landscape than if it had remained under central control from the East.
And for you listening today, this isn't just ancient history. It's about accountability, the demand for dignity and merit over inherited privilege. That's a story that never gets old.
It really doesn't. The military goals weren't fully achieved, they didn't take Kairouan, but the spiritual and legal precedent they set was total. The question they asked, is it piety or ethnicity that grants the right to lead? That remains an incredibly powerful way to look at governance and authority, even today.
And it's a reminder that when power structures don't live up to the ideals they claim to represent,
Those ideals can and will be used by the oppressed as a weapon to demand change.
a final thought for you to consider then. The call for piety and meritocracy is, at its heart, a demand for anti-corruption and for accountability. Think about how often, even now, marginalized groups invoke the core principles of an ideology to challenge an entrenched power that violates those same principles. In a way, they're all walking in the footsteps of the Berber revolutionaries of 740. That demand for moral legitimacy is truly timeless.